Before we begin today, a brief word of warning. One of the episodes we are going to be discussing today is the Season 4 episode Never Again, which does contain scenes of violence against women. Listener discretion is advised. Hello and welcome to Things Are Getting Strange, an X-Files rewatch podcast. I'm Kim.
And I'm Nick.
Hey, see how it works? We're switching it up this week.
Yeah, point proven, yes.
Yep, it does feed in directly to the themes of our first episode today, which is Never Again, but we'll get to that in a minute. First of all, do we have any news today, Nick?
Not that I can think of. I think you've got far-fetched schedules, but that's about it at the moment.
Yeah, I heard in the last few days that they have actually announced a couple of new guests as well. One, unfortunately, I can't remember the name, is another illustrator who's involved with the comic book. But the slightly more exciting one is that on Saturday only, Mitch Pileggi is going to be making an appearance.
Cool. Skin Man in the house.
Yeah.
Why'd I say it like that?
Well, if you've got nothing else to say, perhaps we should move on to our episodes today.
Fair enough. So first up we have Never Again, directed by Rob Bowman, written by Morgan and Wong, and first broadcast on the 2nd of February 1997. Guest stars, Rodney Rowland played Ed Gis. His major role before was Space Above and Beyond.
There's a surprise.
Continuing on, he's also been on Baywatch. And he was in American Horror Story Asylum.
Okay.
And he was in the 3rd season of Twin Peaks.
Oh.
But the big star of the episode, of course, is Jodie Foster as the voice of Betty, who has been in Taxi Driver, Bugsy Malone, Silence of the Lambs, which is, of course, very appropriate to the X-Files, Maverick, Contact, which is also highly appropriate for the X-Files, The Addams Family in 1973, where she voiced Pugsley, bizarrely.
Really?
Yeah, that one threw me. She's in an episode of Frasier as one of the Collins. And she was in The Simpsons once, and you'll never guess who she was.
Herself?
No.
Go on, who was she?
Maggie Simpson.
Aww.
And last, but not least, but kind of weird, is Jen Forgy, who was blink and miss it as Ed's ex-wife in the courtroom.
Okay.
She's been in Random a Half and Mobile Suit Gundam.
She's another voice actor.
And I love finding the dub actors who somehow wind up in the X-Files.
Well then, as I'm presenting today's episode, I'm going to do the synopsis for this one now. Our episode begins in Philadelphia, where we see Ed Jersey as he loses a divorce settlement to his ex-wife, who also has sole custody of their children. Afterwards, he goes and gets drunk in a bar, and then Ed wanders into a tattoo parlour, where he impulsively gets a tattoo. It depicts a Sailor Jerry-like pin-up girl with the words "Never Again" written beneath the image. At work the next day, Ed hears a woman calling him a loser, and has a violent confrontation with one of his female co-workers, who he believes is the person who's been insulting him, though she denies everything. He's subsequently subdued and asked to leave. Meanwhile, in Washington, Fox Mulder and Dana Scully conduct a discreet meeting with a Russian informant called Vleslov Pudovkin. He claims to have seen a UFO at a secret research centre. When they return to FBI headquarters, Mulder heads out on his vacation, which is later revealed to be at Graceland, and leaves Scully strict instructions to follow up on the Pudovkin case for him. Scully is deeply uninterested and seems generally bored with her lot in the X-Files. She expresses real and quite genuine doubts about Pudovkin's credibility, which leads to quite a nasty argument with Mulder. Scully becomes very upset over this, and the general direction that her career is heading. Meanwhile, we return to Ed, who is fired via telephone. He hears the same voice as he heard before and yells at the woman living below him, believing it's her. After also scaring off a pair of Jehovah's Witnesses who stop at his door, Ed goes downstairs and murders his neighbour, throwing her body into the apartment furnace. As the voice begins to talk to him again, Jersey realises it's actually coming from his new tattoo. Scully heads to Philadelphia to watch Pudovkin and sees him enter a tattoo parlour. Inside she meets Ed, who is arguing with the tattoo owner, as he wants his tattoo removed. Ed starts to chat up Scully and invites her out to dinner, though she politely declines. That night, Scully talks to Mulder over the phone and informs him that Pudovkin is indeed a con man and part of the Russian mafia. As Mulder continues to contradict her and threatens to cut his holiday short to return and take over the investigation, Scully grows frustrated. As she ends the call, she calls Jersey and says that she's changed her mind. But rather than go out for a meal, they join to drown their sorrows at the cheesy bar we saw Ed in at the start of the episode. As Scully witnesses Ed's arm bleeding through his shirt, she grows concerned about his health, especially as she sees that he's burnt the tattoo with a cigarette butt. However, somehow, Ed convinces Scully to get a tattoo, and she has one of an Ouroboros applied to her lower back. Scully then stays the night at Ed's apartment, which angers the tattoo further. It threatens that Scully will be dead if Ed kisses her, but he does so anyway. The next morning, Ed leaves to go out on errands, but as he does so, 2 detectives arrive. They tell Scully that Ed's neighbour is missing, and that his blood was found in her apartment. It also contained an unusual chemical substance in it. Scully researches the blood sample on Ed's laptop and tries to call Mulder, but hangs up before he has a chance to answer. When Ed arrives later, Scully tells him that they found blood in his neighbour's apartment and it was likely his. Although he tries to brush it off saying he cut himself while he was helping her move in, Scully tells him about the chemical that they found in the blood. She believes it is ergot, a fungus which causes violent hallucinations, and believes it possibly came from his tattoo ink. She wants them both to head to the hospital to be tested. Ed seems relieved that there could be an explanation for the voice he's been hearing from his tattoo, and he admits it to Scully. As Scully heads into the other room to get ready, her FBI badge falls out of her coat pocket. Scully discreetly picks it back up without Ed noticing. However, the tattoo begins to talk again, convincing Ed to redial Scully's last call to see who she was speaking to. An FBI operator answers, and therefore reveals to Ed that Scully is not a doctor, as she previously claimed, but an FBI agent. Due to this, he attacks her. Although Scully tries to escape, she's quickly overpowered and he wraps her in a bedsheet, carrying her down into the basement with the intent of throwing her into the furnace. At the very last moment, with help from Scully, Ed is able to overpower the impulse of the tattoo and instead thrusts his arm into the furnace, burning it severely. Scully returns to Washington and is congratulated by Mulder for being the first person to make 2 appearances in the X-Files. Ed was brought to a burn centre in Philadelphia, where ergot was indeed found in his blood. It was also revealed to be in Scully's blood, but not enough to cause hallucinations. Mulder wonders if all of this was caused by his earlier argument with Scully, to which Scully replies that not everything is about him.
Thank you. I have a theory about this episode and this season.
Oh yeah.
I think Morgan and Wong are very, very bitter about Space Above and Beyond.
You think?
I do. I mean, Home is the exception, but I kind of feel after that they're kind of lashing out because they've been forced back to this thing they left behind.
Yeah, I can see why you'd think that.
And it's not Home so much, but it's certainly Field Where I Died and Never Again, where basically they're conforming to what we talked about in Field Where I Died. The fandom assumption that they are no Romo, given that this feels like they kind of saw the reaction to Field Where I Died and said, okay, we need to be more brutal. We cannot let these two be in a romantic relationship. So we're going to throw this into them.
It's kind of interesting because the scene about 2/3 of the way through the episode where Scully quite blatantly spends the night with Ed, originally it was scripted that there would be a sex scene there, but Chris Carter mandated it to be removed, and apparently it's the only scene he's ever edited out of one of Morgan and Wong's scripts.
Yeah, and because we're going to get there with Memento Mori, and he's involved with Memento Mori, and there's a very different vibe going on in that episode. So I think, I mean, it's also like the fact they've got one of their guest stars from Space Above and Beyond back in again. I think they're deeply upset with what happened. That their series crashed, burned, they've come back to the X-Files. Started well, Home was perfectly good, and they've just lost, I don't know if they've lost interest or they just got actively hostile. It's weird. Because none of their previous episodes treated Mulder and Scully like this, because this one paints Mulder in the worst light I think we've seen him in so far.
I think other than possibly Syzygy, yeah, definitely. And Syzygy, there was an explanation for why he was being a dick.
And this one, he's just, I don't know, it's one of those whole, I don't understand why Scully is still working with him after this episode.
I would have strangled him.
Yeah, the absolute viciousness of their early fight.
It's even the dismissiveness of Scully's original sting in this episode, which Okay, that's why I've been kind of presenting today's episode to hammer the point across, but her founding argument is her question about why she's never had a desk, and Mulder has a very quick snapback where he says, oh yeah, we'd just be sat face to face. Then you see the pan out of the room, and they are in possibly the FBI's largest office, where there's blatantly enough room for them each to have a desk side by side.
The largest room where we used to keep a photocopier, because let's not forget that.
Yep.
This used to be where the photocopier lived, this enormous office.
But Scully's right, looking at that, there's absolutely no reason why she shouldn't have a desk.
No.
And yet Mulder completely just dismisses this.
Yep. No good reason at all, and, oh yeah, I thought your area was back there. What, the back of the office where they very rarely go?
In that dark corner.
Yeah. There's some stuff down there. We very occasionally see them use it, but not often.
Scully, we take you out the cupboard every morning before we go out on our stakeouts.
Yeah.
But also, the way he just dismisses her at every stage, and it's Mulder written completely out of character, in fairness. But it's like when Scully points out the fact that the story that this Russian con artist spins Mulder is an episode of Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Yeah, and it's just the dark humour of that, she just goes through it piece by piece.
And it's exact.
Yeah. Everything lines up properly. And Mulder's already angry at her, though, just because she lost interest with this Russian's bizarre claim the night before, which we only hear very fragmentary bits of, presumably because if we heard it, admittedly, I'm not actually that familiar with Rocky and Bullwinkle. I know what it is. I couldn't name you any specific episode, but presumably just the audience doesn't say, is that a Rocky and Bullwinkle episode, to uncover the joke too early?
It's the little bits you see when Scully's losing the will to live at the start, is what he's saying is very unconvincing and has absolutely nothing to back it up.
So yeah, it's one of these ones where all the sympathies are in Scully's favour, but I don't like the episode.
I've got to admit, I read through some of the critical reviews of this episode from the time it was aired, and it basically falls into two camps. Is you have the people who like what it does for Scully in this episode, is the fact that you're seeing like Scully's dark side, which is actually what Gillian Anderson requested of Morgan and Wong in writing the episode. She wanted an episode that allowed her to kind of explore this different facet of Scully from normal. And a lot of people like that because it makes Scully seem human.
Yeah. I think then the problem with that is it's been neutered because you've removed the sex scene. Because I think that's Scully going all the way there, isn't it? That's this is her freed.
I also think that the biggest problem with the episode is where it fell in placement, as technically speaking, it was supposed to air before Leonard Betts.
Yeah.
So when you're watching it through with that in mind, it takes a very different tone, because, of course, the ending sting of last week's episode, Leonard Betts, revealed that Scully has cancer.
Yes.
And this episode makes no mention to it whatsoever because of the order it should have been aired.
And it does explain an awful lot of how Memento Mori starts versus how Leonard Betts ends, with never again a real oddity in the middle.
Yeah. It's the fact that I think you could read into it that Scully's nihilism in this episode, Scully's boredom, Scully's just sense of ennui, is because she's had this shock diagnosis. But we'll see when we get to the next one that her attitude completely changes by the point of Memento Mori.
Yeah, and I think it's a problem with depiction of Memento Mori starts with her confirming she has cancer, and that puts us on into a very weird spin, because if you had that off camera, and yeah, she's coming to work, and life feels meaningless, it almost works as they've done it. It just doesn't quite fit together.
She's losing patience with Mulder because she has this diagnosis he doesn't know about, and she's kind of realising how short life can be.
Yeah. Well, that feeds back into my former theory that Morgan and Wong are actively trying to destroy something. They actively have also lost patience with the series.
It's interesting you should mention the bitterness as well, as it's another blink and you miss it reference that I only got when I was reading about this episode online, is the woman that Ed kills in the apartment below. I forget what her name is because I don't think it's actually mentioned on the screen.
Miss Shelley is what they say.
Yeah, but her name almost exactly matches the editor of the time from Entertainment Weekly. And also, to add to that, her parrot cage is lined with covers of Entertainment Weekly, one of which features a picture of David Duchovny on it in the episode. It's because at the time, Entertainment Weekly wrote a couple of kind of critical articles about the X-Files, and the writers took it personal. So therefore, they have killed off the editor on their show, which just seems childish.
Childish and very cheap. I think one weird thing that keeps coming back up then, because we did it with Paper Hearts, is episode order being a factor and how they really should have paid more attention to that. Like this one, I know they deliberately swapped these two over, but again, timing is critical for how these episodes play off each other.
Especially now when you've got continuing plots like Scully's cancer.
Exactly. And so it was Paper Hearts, I understand how that happened. Scully's cancer, on the other hand, no, you really messed up how this episode plays off now. That does beg the question, though, that it was written with whatever the source of Scully's frustration being completely unspecified. And that's kind of that really doesn't do Mulder any favours.
But especially if you're thinking in terms of, if we put these back into the sequence they should have been, Scully's frustration is apparently coming from El Mundo Gira.
Yeah. To be fair, I would probably have murdered Mulder for El Mundo Gira as well. Though, and also, though, on the other hand, she knows full well there was something happening in El Mundo Gira. This wasn't a frustrating what was going on.
I did read that as one of the biggest criticisms of the episode, and one of the fairest ones I could see is that Scully, fair enough, maybe she's had this kind of realisation that her career's at a dead end now because of her association with Mulder. But when Scully's claiming she's bored and her job is boring, she's investigating Flukeman, vampires, alien abductions. How is this boring?
Exactly. I mean, how was the headless corpse last week not interesting? The 3 identical corpses of Leonard Metz we've got. That's amazing.
Or the previous week where we investigated El Chupacabra.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't buy you being bored, Scully. That's not a good excuse.
And especially given all the poignancy we've had in conspiracy episodes up to now, with Scully kind of swearing that she'll help Mulder, that she wants to uncover the truth, that she doesn't want powerful men to get away with these things. For her to suddenly, seemingly out of nowhere, say, "Nah, I'm bored with this, my life's going nowhere, and I'm really resentful for the fact I don't have a desk."
Yeah. So again, it's in conjunction with Leonard Betts, we can understand why. We unfortunately know it wasn't intended to be like that.
Also, following on from that, the thing I really hate is that this episode doesn't really have any sort of catharsis to it.
No.
Is at our end, Mulder hasn't changed his opinion, he's still a dick, and Scully has to say, "Mulder, why the hell are you making all this about you?"
Exactly. No empathy. I mean, I thought Mulder was good at empathy.
Well, we've said time and time again that he is a psychologist.
It reminded me of another thing while we were watching the episode, and I think we both said it, was this has the most boring X-Files sting of any episode to date. Possibly ever. Because it's man gets divorced, man goes to bar, man buys more drinks, man goes to tattoo parlor, man gets tattoo, the X-Files theme.
Thrilling.
Ooh, spooky! Aren't you just on the edge of your seat as to what's next going to happen? Surely she should have started talking just before the sting or something.
Yeah, you need to hear Betty say something before then.
And you don't, and it's really weird, and she doesn't start till the next day, and again, this isn't how you've done episodes in the past. You usually got to have something to keep the audience watching, or they're going to say, well, this is one of those mundane X-Files episodes. I don't know, it's just a really odd choice. And as you said, there's no catharsis. I know you said before that Scully didn't have enough ergot in his system to cause hallucinations, but I remember Mulder saying neither of them had enough, which was kind of felt like a dangling thread of, so what caused all that? Other than Ed is possibly just a psychotic person in general.
I guess you're getting on the fact that Ed has had a lot of blows prior to the start of this episode, because you don't know what the reason for his divorce was, but he's had a divorce and she's taken the kids.
Yeah. And then he gets himself fired, but that's kind of the tattoo's fault. Kind of.
I'm not sure as well how it works in America, maybe it's different, but can you just fire someone over the phone like that with no tribunal or anything like that?
I don't know. This could be a whole no union thing or something, or he could be on a temp contract or something stupid.
I'm pretty sure even, at least in the offices where I work, if you were a part-time worker or in your probation period or something like that, they can't sack you over the phone.
No, but I mean, it could just be for conservation of stuff and everything, and make sure he's in the right place to meet up with Scully and everything else. To pick a completely different tangent, though, Mulder being duped by the Rocky and Bullwinkle story. Again, we're going to have to come back to, we know Mulder has followed leads off of National Enquirer-style papers, because that was all the way back in Conduit. Should we, and I think we've made this point before, should we be concerned about the contents of other X-Files? Because he's a bit too willing to believe. given this guy is part of the Russian mob, and basically the whole thing should be shut down the moment Scully saw this guy going around extorting money from shopkeepers.
It's been something that's been true from Mulder a long time, though, is the fact that Mulder kind of will get leads off the back of a cereal box, basically.
Yes.
He will get these leads with such little credibility, and he will follow them, and he will usually be right, though it's kind of implied in this episode that he was way, way off.
Yeah, given... And again, it comes back to your point of just how frustrating he was when Scully's saying, there's no case. I've given it to someone else with more responsibility. This guy's part of the mob.
But it's also the fact that Scully points out earlier in the episode as well, is Mulder is not her boss. They are partners. They are equals on this.
Yeah.
And you get Mulder giving her instructions, Mulder expressing dissatisfaction when she disagrees with him. When she says she's passed the case on to a more appropriate department, he asks for their contact details so he can speak with them directly.
Yeah.
He's acting like her senior, not her partner.
Yeah, it's just... Oof. I also worry about Mulder's work-life balance. I mean, this has always been a case, but the fact that they're forcing him to take vacation days as well is that, Mulder, are you never down?
I've got to admit, I like the small humour of his spiritual journey, or whatever he calls it, is a trip to Graceland.
Yeah, it's like one of the only funny moments of the episode is the reveal he's gone to Graceland. Like, what in the hell, man?
After suggesting that he's going to do something deeply spiritual and suggesting that Scully does the same.
Yeah. Didn't he mentioned Elvis one time previously, I seem to remember.
I think he mentioned it in the Elvis alien conspiracy sense.
Yeah, I would just worry about that because it's really easy to get that confused with Men in Black.
It's the same joke.
It's the same joke. Well, in Men in Black, the joke was he wasn't abducted, he went back to his own planet, which is different to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy one, which is he wasn't abducted, he went of his own free will.
Yeah.
I do feel as well, though, in terms of just episode construction, that it's still weird that Mulder sets Scully up with this really fake-sounding case when you break it down as like silent explosions. The second you say that, you should be sort of going, and stepping back from it. But it's all in aid of getting Scully to go to a tattoo parlor at the same time as Ed. That's the entire reason the alien contact thing is in here.
It does hold this out for longer than normal with the X-Files, it's a good maybe 20 minutes before the Scully plot and the Ed plot actually collide.
Yeah, and we're wondering what is going on, other than the fact they're both in Philadelphia. Like, how? What? And the fact that Ed is trying to get this tattoo removed, and Scully spots the Ouroboros, which she ends up getting. Which is a nice tattoo. It's nicer than Ed's.
It's a nice kind of bit of symbolism as well, not only because it's the Millennium logo too.
Ooh.
But also the, imagery of the snake devouring its tail, the kind of symbol for eternity.
Yeah. And again, this is one of the bits I feel makes less sense if she knows the cancer diagnosis than it being beforehand, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose in that sense. I was thinking more back to Clyde Bruckman and the idea that Scully's never going to die. The Ouroboros is a good choice.
Yeah, I was about to say that is the other way of looking at it. We can connect back that way. That's nice. Unfortunately, I don't think they were thinking about that when they wrote it.
It's a really nice tattoo, though, Scully's as well. I'm not sure a tramp stamp is really Scully's style, but it's a pretty pattern. Apparently, Gillian Anderson was totally game about having done for real as well, but they told her that there wasn't enough time for her to do so.
It's a bit of a shame, continuity, but I don't think we're getting an X-Files Beach episode. As far as I'm aware. I mean, I could be wrong.
It'd be something, though, if you had any future sex scenes or anything like that. You'd have the focal point of her tattoo and the continuity of it actually being there.
It really sounds so perverted, but I think the most we see of Gillian Anderson was in the pilot, and we're never seeing that level of skin again.
Fair enough.
I could have that wrong, admittedly. It's been many years.
I rather like the transcendent scene when she's having the tattoo done as well.
She is either experienced spiritual bliss, or she's never been more turned on in her life.
Well, I think a lot of people are into getting tattoos. It's pleasure pain, isn't it?
I know, but again, this is one of those problems of the episodes not building up each other properly, because Scully should now go on and get more tattoos, because she seemed to enjoy that a lot.
She might like them less after the end of this episode when she discovers that she's potentially got ergotism from a tattoo.
That's true. As long as you don't go into the dodgy Russian former prison tattooist, you should be okay. But then again, that makes the removal of the sex scene odd, because that's clearly the lead into it, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. It's a bit jarring, actually, the way that she wakes up the next morning and she's wearing, like, his shirt and he's not there and all the rest of it.
Yeah, in his bed, and he's been on the sofa, on the couch and everything, and you were clearly going for something and you wanted to have Scully to have a life outside it. I mean, that's reminded me of the other point, is when Mulder's in Graceland, he's talking to Scully on the phone. She saying, I can't talk to you for much longer, Mulder, and he just sort of offhand say, oh, what, do you have a date or something? And she doesn't say yes or no, and he goes, what, really? And so this is something that you can push off screen in the X-Files because we're worried about their professional life more than their personal lives. Scully hasn't had a date since Jersey Devil, apparently.
And Mulder messed that one up.
Scully, however, does forget about that date in this episode, because I can't remember quite sure what she says, but the inference of what she says is it's before Jersey Devil was her last date. And no, that was quite definitely a date you were on in Jersey Devil, Scully.
He was the most boring human on the planet.
He was, but at least she was trying. And that's the last time I think we've actually discussed Scully's desires. I mean, we've got her maternal stuff in Home.
You've had a couple of episodes, actually, that have focused on Scully as being a more maternal character.
Yeah, but never anything about relationships. She, like Mulder, well, actually, Mulder's very into porn, so you can sort of size up it. Mulder's, I think, feels, he's not asexual, but is he aromantic?
Yeah, I think you could argue that. He doesn't seem to have relationships.
No, and
the only one you've ever been aware of is Phoebe Green.
Yes. And briefly, Vampire in 3. So that was a very weird case.
Yeah, it wasn't really a relationship either.
No, but he definitely slept with her.
Yeah.
So it's okay.
Can we go for the double standards then? Again, if we're getting into the sexism in this episode, is that Mulder's allowed to go and have rampant one-night stands, apparently, but Scully is not.
No, it's just, what is going on, guys? And it's one of these ones where it's far more a thing these days than in the 90s, but there's still, how much was fandom pressure influencing decisions, even back in the 1997? Were they aware of people are going to react badly if you pair them up with other people, given Phoebe and Melissa both crashed and burned? And we've only ever really provided Mulder alternate love interests. Scully has had one guy, and he was a one-off episode.
Right at the start of the first season.
And her boyfriend was chopped entirely because he was in pilot.
Supposed to be in pilot, yeah.
So they filmed it. The scenes were filmed.
Oh, it was filmed.
It was filmed. It's been he was edited out. So I don't think we ever got. I shall go have to look for a unedited version of the pilot so we can actually watch that at some point and see who this guy was.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, she had a boyfriend who was obliterated from existence. She's had one date in Jersey Devil, and she's had Ed. I have to say, Scully, what are you doing? Why are you interested in Ed at all? Other than you've hit rock bottom on this case. Please go and find someone else.
I guess your only other things that Scully's been permitted as admirers. And they're always very chaste admirers that Scully is not necessarily aware of, because we've had Agent Pendrell and Frohickey.
Oh, shoot. Lazarus. He was next.
Oh, Brother Martin.
No, Lazarus.
Oh, yes, he was next.
He was next.
Sorry.
And Brother Martin,
Gender
yes.
Benter is the only time, and again, that's essentially Scully being drugged.
Yeah, so we'll go avoid that one. But there is another X in the X-Files universe who barely...
Yeah, the
scrapes.
detective from Lazarus, that's true.
Yeah.
But again, he's an ex from well prior to... Because he was like a former teacher of hers or something creepy.
What are you doing? Who wrote this?
But yeah, we frequently have people attracted to Scully, but it's either she doesn't react to it, a la Frohickey, or she seems completely oblivious to it in the case of Pendrell.
Yeah. So, yeah, and it's just putting it together with the whole, we've tried to provide Mulder with a love interest twice, but we've never bothered to do anything for Scully. And that's what's going... Chris, what are you doing? Do we have to break down Chris Carter's psychology then? How he's viewing Scully is possibly not in the way he should be? Is he thinking far too much in a kind of boyish fandom sense?
Also, I'll give it partial credit for this one in Scully rescuing herself, because she still gets overpowered and kidnapped, as is Scully's thing.
Yeah.
But she does kind of manage to talk him out of it. Essentially, the villain incapacitates himself by shoving his arm into a furnace. I did some research into how hot furnaces burn as well, so that's potentially like 1,000 degrees of furnace he's stuffed his arm into.
Yeah, we discovered you can just about dispose of a body in it, but it's probably not a good idea.
I think there'd be a lot left over as well. It was part of my research, and I'm talking centigrade, not Fahrenheit, because I'm English, but the average apartment furnace gets to be about 1,000 degrees, and the average crematorium and oven is 1,000 to about 1,300. So you're kind of getting to minimum levels there, and maybe you could just about burn up a body, but I think there'd be a lot left over.
Yeah, and again...
But still, 1,000 degrees when you've just stuffed your arm into it is pretty bad.
He's probably lucky to have an arm left at all.
The door's open, so I guess it'd be a bit cooler, but still.
Not very much. Yeah, the difference is going to be negligible, isn't it? But yeah, I mean, admittedly, we haven't talked much about Ed, but I don't know if there's actually anything to talk about with him.
The thing of more interest is Betty.
Yes, this absolute possessive, misogynistic tattoo.
Is she essentially works a bit like a jealous mistress, is that she wants to be Ed's one and only.
But she also wants to dominate him. It's a dominating, very, very dom sub relationship she's got going with him.
Because she's always calling him a loser and worthless and things like that.
And I'm the only one for you kind of thing.
But when he shows interest to any other women, she threatens him with death and dismemberment.
Yeah.
Which persists even when he burns her and things like that.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting the placement of the cigarette burn, though I did notice it moved between a few shots, which was lazy. But it kind of makes a bit of a third eye on the tattoo.
Oh, okay.
It's right in the middle of her forehead.
That's very interesting, at least. I don't think we actually found out about what happened to the tattooist after that. I mean, did he get arrested? He's basically possibly giving people ergotism.
It's not really an arrestable thing, I think. Worst, you could say it was like accidental and maybe look at his hygiene.
Yeah, but it probably should shut down and do something about it.
Or at least, have to meet some regulations or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, he couldn't possibly have known that the ryes he was using as ink were carrying ergo.
No. I did also just realise now is I don't think he's the best tattooist for a really weird reason. The entirety of that shop in the light is red. That's going to throw every other colour out when you're trying to see it.
Good point.
That's not a good environment.
I think he needs some decent light.
Yeah, to do a tattoo. Again, he was someone who was using God knows what is tattooing and therefore give people ergotism.
Well, he was talking about prison tattoos containing things like dirt and urine when he's trying to do his hard sell on Scully, and it's like, I would have been out that door.
Yeah, it's like, why have you come over here?
The second you mentioned the urine tattoo, I would have been so far out that door.
I'm sure Philadelphia has other tattoo artists. You don't have to go to the one across the street from the dive bar.
I'm pretty sure. I know there's an idea of impulsiveness and kind of seizing the day and awakening in this episode, but tattoos are the kind of things that you do a lot of research into. You want to make sure you've got a good tattoo artist who's got good hygiene, gets good results. You don't just wander into the first one you get to.
It kind of puts me in mind of, do you remember the Futurama episode where they've got, they do the mini ones where there's like 3 stories in one?
Yeah. And
one of them is about Leela being more impulsive and she ends up killing everyone. It's kind of like that with Scully.
Yeah,
I can more impulsive. And we've stopped her before she's got into the murdering Mulder phase of her
But it
life.
Feels like, I can understand Scully wanting to be more impulsive, but she's kind of gone from A to Z in this episode and skipped out a lot of other stages.
Yeah, and I don't know where I've got this from, and I don't really want to say it because I'm not sure if it's true, but I can't help feeling, based on something very, very foggy and very half-remembered from many years ago, that how she's acting in this episode is closer to Gillian Anderson's own sense of self than Scully. So I think it's more she's playing to herself rather than playing to Scully. And that might explain some of the weirdness.
She did admit that if she'd known where the episode was going to be placed, she would have played it differently. But I can see why people would read that in on the basis of Gillian Anderson's reaction was, yeah, I'll totally get that tattoo.
Yeah, so again, it's the whole... I think she liked it very much, but it's whether that was actually right for the character or right for something she wanted to do. And the other thing, and I think Memento Mori also bears this out, is that there's no trace of the Scully from this episode in Memento Mori. And I'm pretty sure we never see this incarnation of her ever again.
To be fair, we've had that happen in The X-Files a few times now, where a writer's just not understood the characters. You feel Morgan and Wong should understand the characters by now.
Which brings me back to my opening thesis of they are very bitter and they are destroying, they are wrecking while they're working. Because they have been here not from the very start, but early enough in season 1. They've been such a mainstay, they were such fan favourites, and they seem to be doing really terrible work this season. I mean, I only think of 3 episodes, and Home was a perfectly decent black comedy, with blackest comedy. And then Field Where I Died, which I know is some people's favourites, on the other hand, and now this one.
Musings you've missed.
That was only one of them wrote that. That was a weird split.
Oh, was it?
That was one of them wrote, one of them directed, so that was slightly different to normal. And given that was so divorced from Mulder and Scully, I think they don't like this relationship.
My genealogy of this episode, I always like to read into what the inspiration was, and this one just left fields when you look at it.
Okay.
It's back when they had to write musings, which is why I thought they both did it, was they were actually working on a script that was about Mulder and Scully going to the White House to investigate Abraham Lincoln's ghost.
Yes, I remember. This is the list of the infamous Unmade X-Files episodes, and this is one of the whole, why didn't we do it?
But instead they kind of wound up writing musings. And then when they got to the point of writing this episode, it was again posited the Abraham Lincoln's ghost, but by that point both of them had gone off the idea, and they wrote this instead. Because there's a comment somewhere from Frank Spotnitz saying he often wondered how things would have been different if they'd written the Abraham Lincoln's ghost episode. I
mean, you'd have made the X-Files feel a lot more episodic if they had. You'd have had the sting of landed bets. Hey, let's go investigate Abraham Lincoln's ghost! And back to Memento Mori. What on earth happened?
Yeah, I think the placement of this is one of my biggest problems with it, it's the clumsiness. If Leonard Betts had gone straight into Memento Mori, it would have had a more natural feel.
Yes.
In this, you can't have a big reveal of a potentially dangerous cancer diagnosis and then go into Never Again without any reference to the cancer.
Exactly. And that's purely because they decided to switch the order after they both completed, and there are factors behind that. Again, it's interesting to look back at TV in the 90s and see that they didn't mind doing this, and they didn't really care if they introduced continuity errors because largely people weren't going to notice. One of the more famous examples of this is American Gothic.
The one with Gary Cole.
And how 4 episodes of that were not broadcast in America.
I think I see where this is going, yeah.
Yeah. One of them is The Ultimate Fate of the Doctor, who is Caleb's friend. Is basically, he's shoved out into one of these episodes that wasn't aired, so he just drops out the series. And for reference, in the UK, we didn't get this experience because Channel 4 put them in the right order and broadcast all of them. So it wasn't a case of, what in the hell happened? The DVDs, weirdly, restored the American order and then stuck the extra 4 in the end. To get to the serious conclusion, and then you get to the random other episodes that don't fit anywhere. Thanks, TV executives.
Bizarre.
But do we have anything else for this episode, or should we shuffle on to... I don't know if it's better, but it's certainly less frustrating.
Reviewing the notes I took in that episode, and after every other line I've written Mulder's a dick.
Again, this comes back to why I think it's more Morgan and Wong doing a wrecking process, because it feels it doesn't feel like you should be able to recover from this. We're getting to it with Memento Mori in a minute. How Mulder acts in Memento Mori is so tonally inconsistent with this episode.
I feel looking at the notes I took while I was watching this, and I must admit I was doing everything I could to stop my attention wandering while I was doing this because I was quite bored, I must confess. But there's a comment the tattoo artist makes where he says everyone gets the tattoo they deserve, it reflects their soul, which made me initially think that there was going to be something more supernatural at play here. But when you're looking at this is how does the sexy pin-up girl reflect Ed's soul and things like that? I don't think we've fed that into the episode well enough.
No, it's a very weird comment for him to make. As you said, as well, I feel Scully should go out and get more tattoos. Let's give her an interesting character quick. I mean, admittedly, it's very anecdotal, but my brother got 1 tattoo, and he then very quickly got more tattoos. So apparently,
I think a lot of people do.
Yeah, so Scully, go forth and get tattooed.
I've also noted about the awkward date is that Scully agrees to meet a stranger at his house because apparently she learnt nothing from Too Shy and every other time that vulnerable women have been attacked in the X-Files.
Very good point. It does feel really odd.
She also, on reaching his house, immediately finds the photo he took of him and his kids where he's burnt his own face out of it. And that's not a red flag.
Yeah.
In the subject of, as well, the no Romo and trying to separate Scully, Scully gives this really uncomfortable speech about searching out authority in father figures, inferring that first it was her dad, then it was Mulder, which also was making me think of, again, written by Morgan and Wong, The Field Where I Died, when we talked about the uncomfortableness of Scully being previously Mulder's father in a previous life and things like that.
It does also tie back into Lazarus, or not Lazarus, but I can't remember. Whichever one had the older detective and the body switch.
That's Lazarus.
That's Lazarus. So yeah, he was also an authority figure, so it does track with that. I mean, I kind of like the story of her sneaking out of the house smoking with the cigarettes. That feels very teen rebellion and everything. Really mild Scully. I mean, you can do more.
No, I think we've now covered everything I wrote down, other than every time I've written the word dick in my notes. It's every time Mulder opened his damn mouth in this episode, I felt he was very, very punchable.
Yeah, I think it's even when Scully comes back into the office at the end, and his greeting to her isn't, "How are you feeling?
Are you okay to work?"
It's, "Congratulations on being someone who's gone to the X-Files twice." Like,
I can't remember what he said exactly, but he also makes some joke about getting a tattoo, and I think if I was Scully, I would have walked out at this point.
Yeah, I don't understand why she's still working with him. Okay, so we shall skedaddle to Memento Mori, being a completely different episode, and one that follows Leonard Betts, so yeah, make of that what you will. Directed by Rob Bowman, written by Chris Carter, Vince Gilligan, John Shaban, and Frank Spotnitz. First broadcast on the 9th of February 1997. Guest stars: David Lovegren played Kurt Crawford, who was in Cool Runnings.
Really?
But that's not the fun one. The fun one is, he was in Red Dwarf.
Who was he in Red Dwarf?
He's uncredited, but he's a bar patron in Backwards.
Oh.
He's somewhere in the background of that shot. I'll have to keep an eye out for that. And I don't think we've ever done her before, but she actually got a proper Wikipedia entry here, is Gillian Barber as Penny Northern, who was in Needful Things, Jumanji, Cats and Dogs. She will show up in Millennium, and she's been in 2 previous episodes of The X-Files.
Which 2?
She was in Ghost in the Machine, and she was in Red Museum.
Oh, okay. 2 not-so-great episodes.
2 not-so-great episodes. The other guest stars are all the familiar ones. We have Lone Gunmen, we have Secret Smoking Man, we have Skinner. We also have Grey-Haired Man, the assassin dude. Scully learns she has a cancerous tumour between her sinus and cerebellum. She initially tells only Mulder and Skinner of the diagnosis and is determined to continue to work. The agents return to Allentown, Pennsylvania, to meet with Betsy Hagopian, a member of the MUFON network they previously met in Nisai. She and others like her were suffering from similar symptoms to Scully. The agents learn that Betsy has died, yet someone is using her phone line. They trace the modem call to Kurt Crawford, a fellow MUFON number. Crawford tells them all but one of the MUFON members have died. Scully is skeptical of Mulder and Crawford's claim that a government conspiracy and her alien abduction are behind her illness. Scully visits the last remaining MUFON member, who is Penny Northern, who is being treated for cancer at a medical centre. Meanwhile, Mulder discovers that all the abductees were childless but had been treated at a nearby fertility clinic. When Mulder is called away by Scully, an assassin, the grey-haired man, arrives and kills Crawford with a stiletto weapon, revealing him to be an alien-human hybrid. After meeting Penny's physician, Dr. Scanlon, Scully elects to begin chemotherapy. Mulder seeks into the fertility clinic and inexplicably meets Crawford there, seemingly alive. Mulder and Crawford hack into the clinic's database and find information revealing Scully has a file there. Mulder sees Skinner and demands to deal with the cigarette smoking man to save Scully. Skinner convinces him not to do so. Instead, Mulder recruits the Lone Gunmen to help him break into a high-security research facility where he thinks he might be able to find more information about how to save Scully. Skinner, however, meets with the cigarette smoking man to make a deal for Scully's life, who then tells him he will get back to him. Inside the facility, Mulder discovers that Dr. Scanlon works alongside several clones of Kurt Crawford. The clones show him Scully's harvested ova and tell him they are trying to save the abducted women's lives since they acted as their birth mothers. They also hope to subvert the colonization project as an inside job. Mulder takes one of Scully's over and leaves, being pursued by the grey-haired man as he escapes. Mulder returns to the hospital to see Scully, who informs him Penny has died, but that she intends to fight the disease. Afterward, Mulder phones Skinner to let him know that Scully is doing okay and may return to work soon, and thanks him for his advice about not negotiating with the cigarette smoking man. The cigarette smoking man has listened to the call and tells Skinner that they will come to terms on their deal later on. Got a weird fact for this one.
Go on.
This episode was written in 2 days, or something.
Okay.
And was not meant to be this.
Okay. What was it meant to be?
I don't know what it is, but you'll never guess who was intended to deliver an episode this season and didn't.
Darren Morgan?
Darren Morgan. This was to be his episode.
Wow, that would have been different.
Yeah, well, I don't think it would have been Memento Mori at all. I think we'd have got something very different. I'm very curious to know what it was meant to be and what he had, but he wasn't able to deliver on time, so they wrote this one very hurriedly. Which is, well, is odd, but also explains a lot, because there's some real weirdness in this episode.
I think it makes it more impressive. I mean, Gillian Anderson won an Emmy for her performance in this episode.
Oh, not disputing that, but in terms of the story, there's some weirdness in here. Like, Kurt Crawford.
Yeah.
Walks out this plot. Oh, is it not Kurt Crawford, his clones.
Yeah.
They are alive and well.
Well, they were locked in a building with the grey-haired man, so I'm going to assume they're not very alive and well.
Well, we don't know that, because usually we get the building burned down or something. That grey-haired man was specifically after Mulder, and they weren't in the lab when he burst through it. They might be dead, I don't know. We do get confirmation that humans can actually kill alien-human hybrids if they know what they're doing. Assuming the grey-haired man is human.
Yeah, they're alien-human hybrids, though. They're not aliens like the bounty hunter.
That's true. It feels a bit weird to throw that in here, admittedly, as much as we're going colonization. And the whole... So, Scully had a weird alien abduction baby thing? At least the other MUFON people did.
It doesn't necessitate she had a baby, that her ovum were harvested for cloning purposes. It's not exactly the same thing. It's still a massive violation, and especially there's a throwaway comment that kind of infers that she's barren now because of it.
Yeah, and I want to pick at that a bit of... whoever's doing this, if this is the government or this is aliens or whatever, they do know they can do this without rendering someone infertile. Because people do donate eggs without being rendered fertile, don't they?
I think the inference is they took all of her eggs.
Oh, so
they mentioned the fact that they gave her a drug that made her produce them a lot faster and things like that.
Okay, I suppose so.
I'm not sure that entirely works in science anyway, because girls are born with all the eggs they will ever produce. So making her produce eggs faster, I guess it's release them faster, but...
It's still, you don't have to do that. You can just extract the eggs. There are ways of doing this.
Or just even remove her ovaries or something like that.
Yeah,
that's even worse still, but same end goals.
Yeah, I mean, and then you get into if this is the government, why the hell would they do that and not just do one of the existing medical procedures?
I think it's pretty obvious at this stage it is the government.
Yeah, but if it was aliens, you could see them doing that with the whole not knowing or not caring. That feels more coldly inhuman, doesn't it? Whereas the government, there are fertility treatments where you can do this without crippling people and giving them weird cancers that will definitely kill them.
But only if they remove the implant, it's inferred.
Yeah, and that's... We're left with an ambiguity in the episode, and I'm not sure if it's intended or not of, did Cancer Man do anything at all? Because Skinner's made this deal, and he said, oh, okay, we'll come to the terms of your deal, and Scully's improved. But that's after Mulder broke into a secure facility, saw Dr. Scanlon worked there, sent Bias to say, stop all your treatments immediately, and now Scully's better, implying that Dr. Scanlon was trying to kill her.
I think the inference was that Scanlon was making them all worse.
Yeah. So, Skinner has made a deal with the devil for nothing.
To be fair, the Cancer Man hasn't done anything yet because he expressly says so.
He does.
Ends telling Skinner as, oh, we'll think of what a valuable price is, so far he hasn't done anything.
It's true. But, oh, Skinner, what have you done?
I think your inference is that Scully has bought herself a little time because they got rid of Scanlon.
Yeah.
Who, whatever he was doing with his treatment, was making people worse, not better.
It's one of these things of, sure, maybe you can do that, but in a hospital infrastructure, and given it's implied to be Scanlan operating on his own. Can you do that without anyone saying, "Sir, what are you doing?" That's too high level of radiation. That's too much of whatever chemotherapy drugs are.
But Scanlan presumably has the power of the Shadow Syndicate behind him.
Well, I suppose so.
We've inferred that, lawyers and politicians and all sorts in the X-Files get away with more than they should.
Yeah, plus, actually, I did think as well, we probably shouldn't trust Kevin. Because aliens are not notoriously good at the truth, are they?
Do you mean Kurt?
Kurt, sorry. Kevin. Kurt. I think it's just done for the visuals, but why do the alien-human hybrids keep on producing clones? Like, you don't have to do that, guys.
It's not only that they produce clones, but we see these clones that are either in the same office across different states doing exactly the same job, with the same name.
Or in the same room.
Or they're all in the same room, yeah.
Sorry. How have you lot not been caught? This is the worst subterfuge operation ever.
I think you've got to assume that fertility clinic is just a secret, evil government fertility clinic. You don't have normal doctors walking through. There's an awful lot of septuplets in that room.
My God, and they've got tanks full of the rest of them. What on earth is going on in there? Oh well, the coffee break's over. I'm going back to work. I did feel as well. We should probably go back to the top at some point, but there's a whole lot of weirdness in this episode I don't quite get. Like, Mulder loses radio signal when he goes into the room with all the clones. I don't know why, because he's talking to them and not talking to the Lone Gunmen at the time, so why does he lose signal just to get it back so he can be warned the Grey-Haired Man has arrived? It just feels weird.
Well, aliens clearly give off a low level of radiation that just messes with your phone.
Everything gives off low level of radiation. Leonard Betts was doing that last time. It's just everyone just exudes radiation. How is Mulder not
In
dead?
answer, it's for drama, so Mulder doesn't know that the grey-haired man is there until he's right next to him.
Yeah. I still think it's interesting, though, he has a stiletto, although given the fuss in Herrenvolk over getting hold of one of them, the Syndicate has at least one. Do they have to? Is that why they want the other one? They have to share the current one. They're tag teaming killing people.
Would you want to be the one who went to the alien bounty hunter and asked if you could use it this week?
Can I have the spare? just have that guy glaring at you. It's really intense. I will migrate back towards the start. Anyway, so the contrast never again is really sharp because the start is really nicely, it's very poetic, very arrestingly visual shot.
It's very much a requiem.
Yeah. And then we get to Mulder visits Scully in hospital. He is the nicest, kindest he's been for a long time. He's brought her flowers, makes a little joke, makes her laugh. He's very sympathetic. This is not the man who sent her to Philadelphia on the back of Rocky and Bullwinkle.
I called Mulder a dick every other sentence in Never Again. In this one, I love that first scene where Scully has to basically explain to him that the cancer is terminal, and Mulder can't accept it.
Yeah, he won't accept it. He's going to try everything he can to find a way around this.
But again, that's their characters done right, is you have Scully clinical, Scully not quite having internalized this herself, but just telling him the facts of this is science, and Mulder, determined that he will find another way, he will find a way around it. That's just perfect characterization for the two of them.
Yes. And the entire rest of the episode is the escalation as he's trying to find this other solution. He's tracing down every lead he's got.
While Scully's putting her faith in science.
Yeah. And even when we get to the end, he chooses not to tell her about the extracted ova.
Mm.
And so, again, I can't help but conclude Morgan and Wong are basically burning the place down around them because they're very upset. And Chris Carter and the other crew, including John Shaban, which is it still feels the odd one out in this little group, are doing their best to make likable characters.
This episode on the whole is wonderful as well. It's a really, really heartfelt, emotional episode.
It is, with one exception, which is Mrs. Scully. Really, what is wrong with you?
I can understand it. She lost one daughter very suddenly. Scully has disappeared in the past and, has turned up on her doorstep in absolute mania because she's been affected by evil TVs.
It's true.
You'd be at the end of your tether. This is Deku's mum in My Hero Academia level stressing for your child.
But she's actually angry, which is an unusual one.
I like her switch in that scene, though, where she's perfectly nice to the doctor and as soon as the doctor's gone, just...
No, don't be nice to the Doctor. You know, if you hit Scanlan now, we could redirect away from this.
It's a very motherly thing to do, though, where, like, it's you've done badly in school and your mother is perfectly civil to the teachers and then has you the second they're out of the room.
Yeah.
It's realistic.
It is. I can only attribute this to Vince Gilligan's influence of we've got procedural stuff going again. Because it's Mulder and Scully find out about the cancer, which was set up in season 3. So the first thing to do is go back to the MUFON group they previously talked to and talk to them. Betsy has died, unfortunately. I think we only got a very distant shot of Betsy in Nisai, or 731.
I think Betsy was the one who was already undergoing treatment.
Yeah, she was in the MRI things.
Because it didn't sound good for her then.
No. And that leads them to the house, which, as much as they say it's going to be a garage sale, you haven't actually prepared. You've left this room full of conspiracy files just as it is. But anyway, they trace that call, the modem line, to Kurt, which then leads them to find him. There is a kind of sick irony to the aliens, because here is a group of the MUFON group, who are UFO enthusiasts, and they believe in UFOs abductions. They all think they've been abducted by aliens. Kurt, their good friend, if he's telling the truth about that part, is an alien-human hybrid. What they're looking for has been attending meetings with them.
To be fair, it's unclear if he has been attending meetings or that's just his cover.
It's very true.
There's no one around to back up the story, and I don't think they ever mention him to Peggy.
No, and I feel they should have taught Penny, I think. But
Penny.
They should have asked Penny about Kurt. But it's kind of an irony. You do have to wonder, though, the alien-human hybrids want these files that they had. What do MUFON possibly have they could want?
Presumably they know a little. They've got their own recollections of this, because they all remember it better than Scully did.
True.
And they all have their implants and things like that, because every single one of them's had their implant removed. So they do have valuable information there. It's just unfortunate that a lot of people, I guess, if MUFON, I think it stands for something like the Mutual UFO Network.
Yeah.
If they came forward and said these things publicly, everyone would just think they were absolutely insane.
Yes. Well, the MUFON, of course, we can trace all the way back to Fallen Angel, since that's Max's outfit.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure MUFON are real. They're pretty big. They're not just in the USA, from what I'm aware. You know, it's kind of like a worldwide organization that just records and charts people's kind of UFO encounters.
Okay. Admittedly, it's a good shock thing for the episode for the grey-haired man to come for Kurt. We're used to that. I mean, he missed a trick by not burning the house down, because that's what I usually expect them to do.
Yeah, good point.
But when he comes in with the stiletto, you suddenly go, wait, what? And then leaves Kurt in bubbling green goo, and it's very much that is a bit of a surprise. Definitely didn't expect that one. It's a strange shock to see an alien-human hybrid come out of nowhere like that. Or whatever Kurt was. We don't know. Well,
just in the wild. I think it's inferred he's a hybrid just because of the clone tanks.
Yeah.
And indeed, if he's telling the truth, he refers to the abducted women as being his mother.
Yeah.
It's also the weird science in there, because it's inferred that, half of their genetic material is taken from these ova, and then the other half is cough, 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 cough. We've got to assume he's trying to infer that it's taken from an alien subject.
Yeah. And yet they all look identical, despite the fact they've got different mothers.
But also, they apparently don't inherit anything from their fathers other than the green blood.
Yeah. You kind of want to sit down with the X-Files science consultant and say, do they just get you into meetings and then ignore you the entire time? What do you do on this season?
But you've got to accept that this is a sci-fi show, and this is a level of hybridization that doesn't exist. This isn't like making a Liger.
No, this is weirdo science. It's just I get why you want the visual of identical people. At the same time, could you not draw less attention to yourself?
But hybridization in the real world only occurs between very similar species, which you're not going to get between humans and aliens.
Yes. Not without even more weirdo science. The rest of the episode, I mean, as you said, Gillian Anderson was nominated for an Emmy. She does a tremendous job.
She won an Emmy.
Won an Emmy, okay, not won an Emmy. Tremendous job in this episode with playing herself going under cancer, writing these letters to Mulder that she ultimately decides to destroy, spending Penny's final hours with her while she's slowly succumbing to whatever Dr. Scanlan is doing to her. while Mulder's in his search for the truth and Scully's faith is in science.
Her experiences with Penny are particularly heartbreaking because, of course, Scully hasn't known her that long, but it's hitting her hard because it's like the window into her future. We've seen that nobody with this strain of cancer from the implants has lasted more than a year.
No.
So Scully knows that very soon she'll be in the same position.
Quite. And the other part of it that must be kind of weird for her is that Penny reacts like they've known each other a whole lot longer because, as far from her perspective, they have, given they spent the shared, whatever the shared experience was during the events of 3, basically. You have reminded me, though, that, hey, Morgan and Wong had a different way of getting Scully back on her feet. There's a nurse, a guardian angel, who we never got an explanation for. Can we get her back? Where is she?
I don't think you can summon your guardian angel.
No, well, we don't even know what she was. She was a very weird entity, ultimately.
I believe it was a guardian angel. We've seen previously, there's a lot of religious elements in the X-Files, a lot of apparent truth in that, particularly surrounding Scully, with her nature, as it's inferred in Revelations, is she's some kind of warrior who'll protect the second coming of Christ, even. So it's not a stretch to think that that's her guardian angel talking to her.
No, it's just it's interesting, though, that the Almighty isn't intervening again to keep her on her feet. And the branch DNA has come up again, that thing that Doctor was so dismissive of back in One Breath.
Ours is the best of all possible worlds.
I know.
It's, God doesn't interfere directly.
Except in One Breath.
God's created man, and it's man's kind of duty to do this.
Okay, but these are aliens. How does that factor into it? Getting into the weird existential stuff now, aren't we?
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of theologians kind of believe, though, is the fact that God created man, man has free will. That's why God will not just kind of part the clouds and just crush the alien bounty hunter or something like that.
Yeah. In the Old Testament, he would have. Absolutely would have just done that.
All those pillars of salt.
And the flooding and everything else. Very hands-on.
But then the New Testament happened.
I know.
And we don't do that anymore.
I know.
But yeah, we've said before, it's a weird thing to kind of reconcile religion into the X-Files world. But they have, so. I
mean, we still haven't reconciled Space Ghost, so there's that too.
I dream of the time that Space Ghost will return.
I think we'll be holding our breath for a while. Hey, I like the fact that the Lone Gunmen get to do more.
Because we're black and stuff.
I know, but we're used to Lone Gunmen being the people Mulder goes and sees for some analysis or some conspiracy tidbit. But now it's a case of, well, the 3 of you are going to come help me break into the secure facility.
He has used them on mission before. The one at the ice rink previously, he took them with him.
But this is more spy stuff. This is actually using their skills as they have them. Except for Byers. Byers gets to be, hey, come into the building with me, and now go and tell Scully to stop her treatment immediately.
In my head, it was more the other way around. It's like, I'll put the 2 weirdos in the hole and take the one who looks like a functional human being with me.
Well, that too. But the implication certainly there is that Frohickey and Byers have kind of got some more electronic and more technical expertise. Whatever Byers' thing is, it's something else. Byers also kind of feels like the face man of the outfit is, if you have to deal with people, you send Byers in, because, as you said...
I feel you would. It's the whole... All 3 of them are different geeks, but Byers is the a lot more personable, kind of well-presented one.
The normal one.
As opposed to you have Langley with his long hair and rock t-shirts and Frohickey like an aging hippie.
Exactly.
In there.
So, yeah, it kind of... Byers, they make sense for that, and that these 2 are into the weird technical stuff, and Byers has to deal with publishers or something for actually getting them with the newspaper out or something.
Mm-hmm.
But it's good. It's nice to see them, and nice to see them do more stuff. I don't know timeline-wise when it was said, but I'm feeling around this time was the first mooted idea of a spin-off from the X-Files.
Okay.
So Millennium had happened, but the 2 of them at this point in time there was no interlinking at all. There's some crossover of writers and some actors and everything, but there's nothing to tie the universes together. There were inklings, or at least there were rumors going around Hollywood of an X-Files spin-off of some kind. And at the time, there was a whole load of different debates about what it was. And it felt really weird to me because I said at the time is the Lone Gunmen. that's just spin-off series, and people were saying weird things like The Surviving Vampire from 3, which in retrospect is even weirder given we're sure she's dead. She died. And I think someone might have suggested Young Cigarette Smoking Man, which feels like a terrible idea.
But doable, yeah.
But doable. I can't... Oh, was it The Adventures of Samantha or something? There were some really wacky suggestions for this. In this case of, it's the Lone Gunmen.
I think your problem, and it is a problem in the Lone Gunmen series that they perceived, is the fact that the Lone Gunmen themselves don't feel very marketable if you're thinking of an American audience.
Indeed.
When you've got, it's a thriller story about 3 computer geeks.
Yeah, and
it's not exactly James Bond, is it?
Yes. So, for reference, and this is for quite a way down the line, we will cover the Lone Gunmen series after season 8 of The X-Files, because that's where it falls chronologically. This episode, I feel, is one of the best, is kind of like one of the best early evidence of this is what you could do, because they can function as something more than just an information source. You've got them in actual dramatic stakes for change.
And being frontline, so they're actually in danger.
Yeah. And, they're not, as much as they've been presented previously as kind of just being knowledgeable geeks who can tell him about conspiracies or analyze data or look at spy satellite photos and tell them things. This is them showing they have the capability to go into the field. Where I think not Fallen Angel, EBE was the only other early one where they hacked to get them into the power plant.
Yeah.
And that lasted all of 10 seconds before they were found out. But this is presenting them as competent and able to go into the field. So, yeah, I think this is the first real sort of shuffling towards them getting their spin-off. For better or worse. Very long and very painful conversation for another day. In terms of this episode, one thing because I remember I didn't get to see this episode when it first broadcast. I don't know when you watch. Again, this is the weird thing of these days you don't get this, but back in the day, I feel so old. Broadcast TV, if you skip something, you were sunk.
Yeah.
There was no internet. The video releases might be years off, if ever coming, because the X-Files had weird video releases where the first 8 episodes were done as individual tapes, and then they only did season blocks, and they cost 80 quid a time. Couldn't afford that at my age. And then you had to wait for the seasons to be rebroadcast. So Memento Mori is one I missed, and I only ever heard about one thing from it. This shows you the level of teenage boys and what we care about. It was a grey-haired man shooting through bulletproof glass. It was the only thing I learned about this episode.
I've got to admit that's better than I was expecting, because I was trying to think where there were boobs in the episode based on your teenage boy comment there.
It's got action or the boobs, and
boobs or guns.
X-Files doesn't usually do boobs. And I know there's an episode which is going to throw that out the window so heavily, but that's quite a long far in the future. You know the one I mean.
Oh, aye.
Yeah. So we've got gunplay was the thing that persisted after the fact. And, well, admittedly, it is actually very cool to see someone go through bulletproof glass because it's only bulletproof to a point.
He just shoots the same spot over and over.
Yeah, and that's pretty dramatic. It's actually good escalation of stuff. And again, as you said, impressive for doing this in 2 days. You've actually got a really good tense scene. And, hey, we care for Mulder in that thing we didn't do last time where we hated his guts.
I think it's a really excellent episode. It's got action and it really hits you in the feels.
It does. And again, it's really odd Never Again sits in the middle. I mean, even if Never Again was before Leonard Betts, it's going to feel, as you said, and as a lot of the criticism said, we can only conclude that Scully's got sick of Mulder. As it stands, it's a case of Scully's got a cancer diagnosis, and that's leading her into this dark path, but in a way that she then acts completely differently when she's got the chart. She's got a cancer diagnosis. And if you put it afterwards, that's going to invalidate Mulder's entire attempt to help her. So in conclusion, I don't think Never Again should have happened. Or you should have thrown it. I think like Paper Hearts, Never Again should have fallen, if you took it in season 3 and had a different lead in, I don't know. No, but actually, there you are. If you put it into season 3 and had it come after Paperclip, it's Melissa's death.
That's a good point. I think you certainly need it before Nisai, because from Nisai onwards, Scully's starting to understand Mulder and starting to get more involved in his cause.
Exactly. So I feel it's a terrible thing if we'd have to restructure the series entirely, but yeah, Paper Heart should be season 1 or some other point. Never Again should have been right after Paperclip.
Yeah.
And it would have fit much more neatly there, and that would explain her mindset. That would actually explain Mulder as well, though, because he had been so annoyed at that point with how everything dead ended in Paperclip. But again, it's the whole, we're thinking of this in terms of serialized TV series, and while the X-Files was doing that to a point, it was very episodic. There was not a lot of caring about what flew from one to the next, with a couple of exceptions, which are generally conspiracy.
I think we've seen even with the conspiracy, it's things like the trajectory that the plot about the vaccine is taking is the fact that they may be thinking a little bit ahead, but not that far.
No, I think it's that thing I said about the conspiracy theories, is it's always, we'll give you loads of answers in part 1, then we'll try and claw them back. And Terma was weird because it didn't claw anything back. It just fell apart instead and then destroyed all the evidence. And, hey, Mulder, Scully, Skinner, does that congressional meeting not want you back? Have they rescheduled yet?
No, they're on hiatus. They're on recess.
They're never coming back.
You do get the kind of touch of the syndicate in this one through the scenes with Skinner and the Cancer Man.
Yes, I like the deal with the devil, and I like that Skinner has said to Mulder, I'm not helping you do it. I mean, which is odd, because last time he said he couldn't, and this time it's very much a case of, I'm not doing it.
It's protecting Mulder again, is he doesn't want Mulder to become like him, essentially, become a dog of the syndicate.
But I love the fact that Skinner has come to the conclusion that basically there's no way out, and he's going to have to trust this guy. And so there's an interesting implication for the future.
I love their whole kind of exchange, though, where he kind of says to the Cancer Man, or at least I don't have to take the elevator up to work, all the symbolism inferring he's the devil, which kind of then feeds into this final meeting with him, with the deal, with the room full of smoke and all the rest of it. It's very, very nice symbolism.
I even like Cancerman just playing into it. Oh, you think I'm the devil? And then, which way to the elevator, Mr. Skinner? You're having the time of your life here, man, aren't you?
Well, Cancerman does whenever he's got the upper hand.
Yes, if he's in control, he's just. But then again, the smoking thing feels weird to me then, because I think he does it both ways. He smokes as celebratory, and he also smokes when he's in the worst possible state. Because every moment of this episode was celebratory. Yep, just gonna keep on puffing smoke everywhere.
It's knowing that Skinner's been rebelling and now he's got him again.
Yeah, he's under his thumb.
Which has poor implications for the future, I presume, is that we've had 2 seasons of Skinner breaking away from the Cancer Man and now he's back under his control.
Yeah. What will the deal involve? And you just sort of put, twist the knife of Mulder ringing up and saying, yeah, right, sir, best not to trust the Cancer Man. Ooh.
Well, CSM's in the room with him.
Yep. Do you have anything else for this episode?
I think the only thing you haven't mentioned, which is a biggie as far as I'm aware for fans, is the forehead kiss.
Oh, how did I forget that? Well, I mean, yeah, do you want to get into what was filmed and not taken?
It was originally supposed to be a kiss on the lips.
I'm going to come back to my thesis. Morgan and Wong wanted that relationship dead. Chris Carter said, no, but not that strong. We need to build up to it.
It's so sweet, though, especially after Mulder has read Scully's journal, the kind of untitled letter to him, which Scully's embarrassed about because she'd got to the point where she was going to destroy it.
Yeah.
And it comes also, as well, immediately after Penny's death.
Yes.
As well, because Penny does die at the very end of the episode.
Again, this is the Avengers level, will they, won't they thing of, they're so close, but there's a dividing line still.
It's also the surprising positive sting for the episode is just before Penny dies, she just kind of imparts on Scully that Scully has to get well. She's got to be the one. She has hope that Scully will do so. She kind of believes in her. And then Scully kind of deciding she is going to fight this, and Mulder kind of, admitting himself to be at her side as she does so. It's the only thing that offsets it is then that final sting of Skinner and the Cancer Man.
Yeah.
But from the perspective of Mulder and Scully, it's a really beautiful episode that kind of solidifies their friendship again.
Yeah.
after Never Again.
Never Again. An episode that, as far as I could tell, needed to be a season earlier, if at all. Or, if Mulder could do something catastrophically stupid in the future that's going to necessitate this as well.
It's one of the things. I am not one of these your Sculder fan shippers, but it's still a beautiful ending. I really like it, even if you just take it as a sign of friendship.
Yes. I mean, again, I think that's the other part of it, is this is as much, even if you, as you say, you don't get into the shipping aspect of it, you want to see them being friends and having a good time with each other. As if read that's platonic, read that's romantic, however you want to, you don't want them snipping at each other like they did in Never Again.
They're best when they're working together for the same ends.
Yeah.
Even if Mulder's taking a kind of more spiritual approach and Scully's more rooted in science.
And we don't mind them getting annoyed at each other. It's the fact that, because everyone drives each other insane at some point in time, it's the fact that Never Again, they don't reconcile, I think, is the biggest problem. Because ultimately, then, I think Never Again wouldn't have been quite so obnoxious if Mulder had had an attitude change at the end there.
Mulder had apologised.
Been
got
sympathetic.
her a desk.
Yeah, just done, the events of the episode had led him to say, I need to change.
The bit that grated with me is, you are coming to work knowing that while you've been away, your partner had a kind of one-night stand with the wrong person, got a tattoo, nearly died.
Yeah.
The first thing you do is walk into the room and make a joke about thinking of getting a tattoo yourself. It's a miracle that she didn't drag him off to HR at this point.
Yes. I mean, we have speculated many times about why Scully is still working on the X-Files, and Never Again could be the final episode of the X-Files. You just put that out in case of, you decide whether they kept on working together and found aliens, or Scully quit right there and then.
Yeah.
This is like the 70s. If you don't plan for the big finale, you just get cancelled. And so we just shut down with Mulder being an absolute jerk and Scully being, and having that kind of weird ending shot where they just sort of pull back and show you the enormousness, as you said, of the office, where you can fit 2 desks in perfectly fine. Future, more damning, we know they can fit 2 desks in there.
Not for a long time.
Not for a long time. For far longer than we'd like, but you can get 2 desks into that space. Whoa, yes you can.
What would be the problem facing each other, even, to be honest?
Other people work like this. I've worked like this when I used to work in an office.
I do work like this now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can fit each other. That's just how people work in cubicles and things. You've got an office. Or you can put the desk outwards and put them against the wall.
There are so many ways that there is no way in hell, even if she just had a little one-man desk, it would not fit in that room.
Yeah, it's just, I think ultimately there's a weird question, because we've kind of drove Memento Mori back to Never Again, because there's a lot to hate in Never Again, and we can keep complaining about it. But, I mean, this is a little bit, we're going to speculate forward, and as we've alluded to, eventually there'll be another desk in that room, and it's not for a very long time. You do have to wonder what on earth the thought process was on the X-Files production team. Because this episode has come through. Morgan and Wong submitted it. Chris Carter, or whoever makes the say, Frank Spotnitz, blah, 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 have said, okay, this one will go forward. It's fine. We're going to put this one into production. Distributed the scripts, done the rewrites, filmed the episode. At no point during this process has anyone said, okay, for the set designer people, can you get another desk in here? No, Mulder hasn't learned anything, but neither has the production crew. And that's even more mystifying as to why no one said, yeah, we should change the set. Why haven't we changed the set? Because we've made a point here. And we're just going to let it stand.
I'm pretty sure from the perspective of, let's imagine that this is a real FBI office, that everyone's going to need their own desk.
Yeah.
As well. It's the first thing HR would have done when they've moved her into that office, is make sure that she has all her DSE set up and everything like that.
I don't know why the FBI didn't do this, and I don't understand why the X-Files production team didn't change this. It's really odd that this is then stands until we can say, yeah, season 8. Season 8 is when the second desk arrives. What the hell is going on?
But we digress.
We digress. Sorry, this has been Furnishing Mulder's Office, an X-Files furniture podcast. I can only attribute it to, were Morgan and Wong and Chris Carter not seeing eye to eye at this point in time or something? They're still contractually obliged to be there, but the people who stay on the X-Files don't want to admit that Morgan and Wong have raised a good point here. so they don't change the set design to account for this. Okay, have we got anything else?
No, I think you've covered everything.
Okay. Would you like to go to Kim's Conspiracy Corner?
Our episode this time carries on back from the abduction plot thread that we saw arising in Dwayne Barry and Ascension. It's not something we've actually focused on for a while because we've been caught up more recently in the black oil and vaccination plots. But this is the one that involves the hybridization programs. It's now been revealed that these hybrids are actually made from ovum that's been harvested from the women who were taken during these abductions, such as we saw in Betsy's MUFON group previously. These ovum, when they have been taken, they literally have taken all of these women, so all of these women, including Scully, have been left barren, though it's not something that Scully seems to be aware of at this time, as Mulder does not reveal this to her at the end of the episode. We also learn for definite that there is a failsafe involved when the implants that we previously saw were implanted in all victims in the back of their necks are removed. We did see previously that Betsy of the MUFON group had developed terminal cancer, and it was previously revealed that everybody, including Scully, had removed their implants, though we now see a causal connection, that all of these women have developed the identical tumours. They are all a small tumour which appears on the woman's sinus, which has a severe risk of pressing in on their brain and killing them. And indeed, we've seen in every case thus far, it has been terminal within a year, which does not give a good prognosis for Scully. We also see that the shadow government is very, very keen that these women disappear. They have even put their own agents on there to kind of expedite the process. In Dr. Scanlon, it's not clear why this is needed when the cancer is invariably fatal anyway, but he is just speeding along the process. We also see the fact that the Syndicate have managed to get their hands on at least one more of these kind of alien stiletto weapons, and that it is just as effective against the hybrids as it is against a full-blown alien.
Thank you. So, we will have to take a break for 2 weeks, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, I guess next week a lot of you are going to be having fun at Farfest anyway. We are also going away. We're having a week in Rome. So, what? I guess you'll all be busy. You won't be listening to us, so we'll take a vacation too. Yay! But we will be back. So our next episode will actually be on the 21st of September, coming out at the usual time. We'll be talking about Kaddish and Unrequited.
Yep. As long as I haven't been arrested in the Vatican.
As long as you haven't been arrested in the Vatican. We're going to try and avoid that.
Yes, ideally.
But yeah, I do hope you all have a wonderful time at FileFest if you're going there. We are still super jealous that we can't go.
Yeah, it would have been nice. However, in the meantime, if you'd like to get hold of us, our email address is thingsargettingstrange42@gmail.com.
Alternatively, you can also get hold of us on social media. On Twitter and Tumblr, we are GetStrange42. On Mastodon, we are at GetStrange42@universedon.com. And on Facebook, you can find us by searching for Things Are Getting Strange, an X-Files Rewatch podcast. If you'd also like to hear more from me, I also have a stream on Twitch. As of the recording of this episode, I'm playing through Mortal Shell. My episodes are generally every Monday and Wednesday. They run from 9 p.m. BST to about 11:30 at the same time. As previously noted, we're not here next week, so there aren't going to be any next week. So my next episode will be the 18th of September, I think, if you want to join me on there. That's on twitch.tv/Dire Not Dire. That's DYERNOTDIRE, Dire Not Dire.
We have a Patreon, patreon.com/thingsargettingstrange, where you can find the first part of our soon-to-be-replaced Let's Play of the first X-Files game, where we're going to take that down and completely redo the whole project from scratch, just because it's been very awkward to do and the sound got really kind of broken. So, yeah, we're gonna start over and we're gonna do it better this time and get it all done in one go.
Hooray!
Hooray!
It should be noted that there are 3 separate tiers on our Patreon. They all have varying levels of perks, but if you fund us at any level, you will have access to the Let's Play and any other special episodes that we do that won't otherwise be available.
which should include novels, comics, trading cards, and unmade scripts, of which there are a few, which unfortunately does not include the Abraham Lincoln one, very sadly. Or whatever Darren Morgan's episode was going to be that Memento Mori went in place of.
I see, you're still kind of hinging on the card game there as well.
I really want it to be a Yu-Gi-Oh! Style thing, but I'm prepared for it to be like Top Trumps or something. I have no idea, actually. We'll find out. Thank you all for listening, and until next time, please remember...
The truth is in me.